Have you ever wondered why relationships are so important? Have you ever thought about it? And what gives it its importance? Well, if you've ever tried to put two magnets, the two opposite poles of a magnet together, you put a piece of paper over those magnets and gently sprinkle metal filings over the paper, it arranges itself naturally in a way based upon the attractive force, the field that comes from the magnets. Because you see, there's a field of relationality when it comes to relationships. And the field of relationality has to do with how we relate to one another. And in this chapter, in chapter 5, verse number 18, we discover that we need to walk in wisdom. Actually, starting up in previous verses 17. Walk in wisdom. And walking in wisdom has to do with using my time wisely, not becoming inebriated or addicted in any way to that which decreases my agency. Because relationality requires agency. And high relationality requires high agency. The higher your relational index, the higher your agency needs to rise, your ability to navigate, because you are going to get into some very interesting situations, to say the least. Not to say nothing, to say the least. And getting into challenging relational situations requires navigational skill. And right here in the biblical text, the writer says, be filled with the Spirit. Now, there is so much here in this text, but we need to be driven and drawn driven by the purposes and the will of God, what His desire for us is, and to be drawn by our vocational calling, because that is what draws us into a direction and puts us on a trajectory, a path of flight that is going to require high transformation. And relationships are like that. They afford us high agency and high relationality. Now verse 19. Verse 19 says, being filled with the Spirit has to do with a particular way of living. It says verse 19, addressing one another. Addressing one another. Notice one another. Alone is the word. Alone. Not all alone. Alone. It's the word for one another. It's a word for reciprocal, reciprocity, mutuality. A two-way, three-way, four-way, five-way street. Not just a one-way traffic engagement with people. One another, verse 19. Down in verse number 21, you see the same idea. Submitting to one another. Because no man is an island, and God has not called us to sit soak and sour alone. If you sit soak and sour, at least be in a group, be on a team. But don't do it alone, because you'll wipe yourself out. So the word here is not all alone, it is alone. And this word appears at least 60 plus times in the New Testament, in Paul's writings in particular. Because Paul is the apostle to the Gentiles, and he's talking about this novel entity called the assembly, within which there is Jew-Gentile union, where there is reintegration of fragmentation into a body, into an entity which is relational and highly relational. So as we engage reciprocally with one another, how do we engage? Addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual psalms, singing and making melody. Well, here the writer is talking about aesthetically written expressions, psalms, hymns. They first of all are expressions that rise vocally. We are giving voice to them. The first century assembly was challenged in the area of alone, not all alone, but together, giving vocal expression, aesthetic expressions, beautiful expressions that are vocal, because that's what Psalms is all about. Poetry is like that. Poetry goes beyond words and yet uses words, but takes us to a level beyond just mere words. Because you see, life is a symphony, and this is what verse 19 is saying. Psalms, hymns, spiritual psalms, songs, and singing. And why there are shades of differences and difference in each of these words, psalms and hymns and spiritual psalms and songs and singing. They all fall under this aesthetic, beautiful, artistically, architecturally crafted vocal expressions. And the church has been a great benefactor of that, because many of these expressions were written down across the ages, through the ages. We have what we call hymnody. And hymnody has to do with the hymns, the great hymns of the faith. Oh, they are beautiful and challenging. Doesn't mean to say they are verbally, plenarily inspired, but they are written as human expressions, artistically crafted by human beings, singing to one another. That's what I want you to notice in the text. It's not to yourself, making melody to yourself. It's addressing one another. And that's why inside of our edification modality, the mechanism, if you will, the model, if you will, that we utilize to mutually encourage each other. It needs to be addressing one another. In our so-called worship experiences on a given morning, a Sunday morning, we have this idea that we constantly are singing to God. That is an aspect. But another very primary horizontal aspect, which has high sensitivity in the scriptures, is one another. It is encouraging one another. Please don't miss that. We seldom lift our eyes. We so seldom lift our hearts toward one another and reach out to touch each other. We purely think that this thing that we call worship is vertical. It is to God. Well, the New Testament expression of when the assembly gets together, that it is to be done in an edification modality where the focus is horizontal, mutual, alone. Psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing and making melody to the Lord with your heart. Now you say, oh, I can't sing. I can't keep a note. That's not the emphasis here. The emphasis here is singing with your heart first, because our song needs to be on our heart first, on the control room of our being, or in the control room of our being, and then it spills out. And so we are to be engaging reciprocally in aesthetically crafted expressions, giving voice to the appointed one with our whole being, with your whole being, the writer says, specifically from the control room of your life, which is your heart. Notice the mutuality. Notice the spirituality. Notice the vocality. Notice the melody. It's something that is dynamic. It has movement to it. It's not drifting. It's not trying to turn the lights down, dimming the lights and having smoke up here and going on with these psychedelic lights as if we can geolocate God as we switch from a major key musically into a minor key. Now all of a sudden we geolocate God. The mutuality of the singing, the making melody, what issues from our hearts is toward mutual edification. And the scriptures is so specific here. And we zip right by these verses and we constantly jump towards the vertical. Well, here the expression is one another. Verse 19 and verse 22. Don't forget that. When you get together in your cell group, in your prayer meeting, in your worship service, so-called, because I think that's a misnomer. The picture is mutuality. We are speaking and addressing one another, making melody in our hearts, yes, to the Lord, but the emphasis is one another. Mutual edification. Verse 21 is going to talk about mutual submission. Be on the lookout today for opportunities where you can mutually edify, mutually be in edification mode when you encounter believers. You're going to encounter some of them today. And posture for mutuality, reciprocity of serving and ministry. I trust that as you go into this day, you will enjoy your walk with the Lord. Goodbye for now.